What a familiar scene, a completely overgrown, beautiful looking, live planted terrarium. If you've been keeping reptiles for any amount of time, we've all been at this point, looking at a tank that we have and desperately wanting to do something different with it. If you haven't had this happen yet, just wait, your time will come. Well, this is it for me. This is an Exoterra that was set up about 2 years ago. This was housing my Ufaga pumilio elmerente, and it definitely needs a facelift. We'll be doing so with the help of today's sponsor, Exoterra. They've been kind enough to provide the substrate that I'll be using for this remodel, the Exoterra Substratum. This is an extremely multifaceted substrate that you can use as an all-in-one or as part of a substrate mixture. In this video, I'll be using it as an all-in-one substrate, but more on that later. Let's take this tank and turn it into this. I feel like it goes without saying, but you want to ensure that there are no animals in the tank when you're doing so. I have no frogs left in this tank. They've been sold off to my good friend, Dr. Alec Brown. Once you've established there's nothing inside the tank, let's move to an area with a bit more space to work in. And now that we have a little bit more space, we can get together the majority of the materials that we'll be using. It's pretty simple, really. We just have some pruning shears or some scissors. We also have some gloves because this is going to be a very messy job. Alongside the gloves, we have a little dump bin just to put all of our plant cuttings, the lid, etc. And finally, we have the Exoterra Substratum. That's really all we're going to need, although I did end up using a little bit of the Exoterra Biodrain as well because, well, simply, I needed a larger drainage area. I didn't necessarily need to have a larger drainage layer because the Substratum also duals as a drainage layer. In this case, I wanted more aeration and less Substratum, so that's what I ended up doing. Now that you have an idea of what we're going to be using in the remodel, let's get started with the first thing, and that is removing the top and assessing what we need to get done. Now we must forge a battle plan. We're taking into consideration that most of the plants are either dead or extremely overgrown. Oh, and let's not look past the fact that I absolutely hate that giant cork log in the middle, so that's gonna have to go as well. There's really only one solution to these problems, and that's gut the entire tank. So let's get chopping. Something that I find very useful when chopping plants or just keeping vivariums in general is a very good fine mist mister. I'll leave the link to the one I'm using down below if you're interested. It is an affiliate link, so feel free to pick it up, use it for yourself. Whether you pick it up or not, make sure you have some mister close to you when you're doing this because I'm taking out the plants from this very humid environment and moving them out to the open air. The humidity drop is going to cause them to wilt, so what you're going to want to do is just mist them every 10 to 15 minutes, ensuring that they have enough humidity to keep going. You definitely won't regret buying this mister if you do decide to get it, and plus, it's Christmas. Treat yourself! Now, after misting what I had already taken out, I removed the remaining plants, and finally it was time to take out this bendy vine thing. I ended up having to use some wire cutters to get it out properly, but it really did work. As you can see, I have moved on to the substrate now, but what I totally forgot to show was me chopping out a good portion of that cork bark log, so keep that in mind for later in the video. As far as the substrate goes, it's really not that exciting to show me removing handfuls of substrate, but that is what I did. Now after I removed the substrate from the tank, I ended up taking some good time to clean the side of the wall. It was covered in algae and looked terrible. I ended up using vinegar water and a razor blade to tidy it all up. After assessing how I wanted the tank to look, I had come to the decision that I needed to increase the height of my drainage layer ever so slightly because the background started so high up off the base of the tank. I rinsed some biodrain and tossed it in before reinstalling the drainage divider, which in this case is just some window screen mesh. Now make sure to take note that there is an overhang of about a ½ inch on all sides of the drainage screen. What this does is help prevent the substrate from bypassing the divider entirely and just ending up straight in the drainage layer. Now that we've installed the drainage layer, it brings us to the substrate of choice for this tank, which is the Exoterra Substratum, and as we are adding it, let's take a few minutes to talk about it. Firstly, we need to understand what it is in order to use it properly. So without going too sciencey on you, but sticking true to my roots, let's get into it. Exoterra Substratum is essentially volcanic soil collected from Mount Aso in Japan. Volcanoes are a fascinating subject, and I'd love to spend more time talking about them, but unfortunately we do not have time for that. If you were a fan of gardening, you might have heard the saying volcanic dust or ash is extremely beneficial to add to your soil mixture. Now the reason for that is because typically volcanic dust, volcanic ash, whatever you want to call it, is very high in iron, magnesium, and potassium, as well as a couple other ingredients, all of which are critical for plant growth. So in one sentence, what I'm saying is that your plants will grow extremely well in this substrate, especially if they enjoy acidic soils, which typically the tropical plants that we are growing do enjoy slightly acidic soils. If you want some proof of that, just talk to your aquarium hobbyist friends because they've been using this stuff for years. Now, speaking of the aquarium hobby, Substratum also contains live Bacillus Bacteria, which has actually proven to modulate or regulate a huge amount of parameters, including pH or the acidity of the soil, dissolved oxygen, and phosphates, to name a few. Now the final key ingredient is activated carbon. This removes toxins and different odors from the tanks, all the while making a breeding ground for springtails and other bioactive components. Whew! Now that we've covered the nerdy part, let's put that knowledge to use and talk about the different ways you can use Substratum. So in total, there's 3 different ways you can use it. Firstly is as a sole substrate, which, as a side note, I do plan to implement in the future build, so keep your eyes out for that. It is really as easy as it sounds. Add 1 to 2 inches of the Substratum to your build, and bam, you're done. I've seen it, it works great, and it actually grows plants very well. Now the second option is mixed into other substrate mixes that you might be custom building at home. What this achieves is adding nutrients to your mix like calcium, nitrogen, potassium, and phosphorus, as well as the live beneficial bacteria. The last way to use it is the way that I'm doing in this video, and that is just a standard drainage layer. This is biodrain in this case, with the mesh over top and then the substratum as the sole substrate on top of it. I do want to thank Exoterra for sponsoring this video. I'm not paid to say this, but it really is a great product, and you should definitely pick some up for yourself. Finally, after adding the substrate to our build, I began messing around with the wood that I could use in the hardscape, and I landed on this piece. It really did need something a little bit extra, so I whipped out the super glue and cotton balls. Thanks, Troy, by the way. What this combo does is create an exothermic reaction that releases a whole ton of heat, and it results in a very hard bond of the super glue and whatever it's touching, in this case, the 2 pieces of wood. It also speeds up the reaction, so that's kind of nice. Because it took me about 1 minute or less to bond these 2 pieces of wood, and while the glue was still a little bit wet, I added some dried coconut coir as well as cork bark dust in order to hide the white cotton part so you didn't see it as an eyesore in the tank. Now the hardscape is completed and it's time to plant. Like I mentioned at the beginning, you can see that I hacked out a good portion of that cork bark hollow to allow light to penetrate deeper into the tank. All the while, I ended up stuffing it with sphagnum moss, and it's another place to grow some epiphytic plants. If you are curious about my plant selection, I'll leave the entire list of what I was using in the description down below, along with all the links to the different products that I used if you are interested in picking them up. Now in terms of placement, I will likely be tinkering with the different plants in this tank for quite some time before any animals go into it. This is where we started, and this is where we are now. Quite the difference in terms of aesthetics, ease of cleaning, and just the overall feel has totally changed this tank. I'm sure some of you are pretty curious as to what I'll be keeping in this tank in terms of livestock, and to be honest, I really don't have any plans for this tank yet, but I will say that it's most likely going to end up being some dart frogs eventually. For those of you who made it to the very end of the video, I want to thank you so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed. If you have any questions, comments, concerns, leave them in the comment section down below. If you like this kind of video and are looking for more of them, make sure to click that subscribe button, and we'll catch you in the next video. Later.